We all indulge in wishful thinking from time to time. What would happen if that wishful thinking made its way all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States? That may be the case with Brunson versus Adams et al. Mr. Brunson has petitioned the Supreme Court to hear a case against 388 federal officers, including President Biden, Vice President Harris, and former Vice President Pence, as well as 385 members of the U.S. House and Senate. Does his case have a constitutional leg to stand on, or is it just wishful thinking? We'll look at that next, right here at the Constitution Study.
Love the neighbors and have a few good friends. Every day we're everyday Americans. Oh, every day we're everyday Americans.
Hello there, everyday Americans, and welcome to the Constitution Study. I hope you had a wonderful Christmas, and I hope you enjoyed the Christmas present of going back to the old music. I had several people request I go back to the everyday Americans music for my little intro there. And well, I got a new version that I think I like it. I hope you do as well. Please leave a comment. Let me know. I've got a lot to talk about as I prepare for 2023. This will be my last planned video in 2022, but I'll do that at the end of the episode. So hang around for that. For now, let's talk about this very interesting case Mr. Brunson is bringing. Mr. Brunson's case is audacious, and not just because of who the defendants are. He claims that a unique breach of national security occurred and that the only redress for this grievance is the removal from office of the president, vice president, and most of the members of the House and Senate. What charge could Mr. Brunson bring with such scope? Does the Supreme Court have the legal authority to remove these office holders? What would be the consequence if they do? This action against 388 federal officials in their official capacities, which include President Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., Vice President Kamala Harris, Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, and former Vice President Michael Richard Pence, the respondents. All the respondents have taken the required oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and as such, they are liable for the consequences when they violate the oath. The Constitution requires in Article 6, Clause 3, the senators and representatives before mentioned, and the members of the several state legislatures, and all executive and judicial officers, both of the United States and of the several states, shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution. This is codified in U.S. law by Title V U.S.C. Section 3331, which reads, an individual, except the president, elected or appointed to an office of honor or profit in the civil service or uniformed services, shall take the following oath. I, state their name, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservations or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which I am about to enter, so help me God. Mr. Brunson claims that the respondents were warned and asked to investigate an attempt by a highly covert, swift, and powerful enemy to destroy the Constitution of the United States. He further claims that respondents purposely thwarted all efforts to investigate this, whereupon this enemy was not checked or investigated, therefore the respondents adhered to this enemy. Because of respondents' intentional refusal to investigate this enemy, petitioner Rayland J. Brunson brought this action against respondents because he was seriously personally damaged and violated by this action of respondents, and consequently, this action unilaterally violated the rights of every citizen of the USA and perhaps the rights of every person living in all courts of law. On January 6, 2021, the 117th Congress held a proceeding and debate in Washington, D.C., called the Proceeding. This proceeding was for the purpose of counting votes under the 2020 presidential election for President and Vice President of the United States under Amendment 12. I want to take a closer look at this statement. First of all, Congress did not hold a proceeding or debate. They were assembled, as required by the 12th Amendment, to witness the counting of the votes for President and Vice President. While most of those watching or reading this probably know this already, these are the votes that the presidential electors appointed in each of the 50 states in the District of Columbia cast on December 14th, 2020. Not any vote that may have been cast on November 3rd of that year. Now, during this proceeding, over 100 members of Congress claimed factual evidence that the said election was rigged. The refusal of the respondents to investigate this congressional claim, the enemy, is an act of treason and fraud by respondents. A successfully rigged election has the same end result as an act of war, to place into power whom the victors want, which in this case is Biden, who, if not stopped immediately, will continue to destroy the fundamental freedoms of Brunson and all U.S. citizens and courts of law. I'm not sure who Mr. Brunson claims is the enemy. Is it the members of Congress who made the claim, or the claim itself? Or is it the members of Congress who refused to investigate? That would be weird, since Mr. Brunson also claims that these members of Congress gave aid and comfort to this mysterious enemy. Due to the uniqueness of this case, the trial court does have proper authority to remove the respondents from their offices under 18 United States Code Section 2381, which states, "Whoever, owing allegiance to the United States, levies war against them or adheres to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort within the United States or elsewhere, is guilty of treason and shall suffer death and shall be imprisoned not less than 5 years and fined under this title, but not less than $10,000, and shall be incapable of holding any office under the United States." How does one give aid and comfort to themselves? Let's look at these claims one by one. Is the failure to act on a credible claim of criminal activity treason? Is it treason to not act on a claim if it comes from Congress? Is an act of fraud treason? Let's start by defining treason. Under the Constitution of the United States, treason is defined by Article 3, Section 3, which reads, "Treason against the United States shall consist only of levying war against them or in adhering to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort." Now, did the respondents adhere to an enemy of the United States, as Mr. Brunson claims? Well, Webster's 1828 dictionary defines an enemy as a foe, an adversary. A private enemy is one who hates another and wishes him injury or attempts to do him injury to gratify his own malice or ill will. A public enemy, or foe, is one who belongs to a nation or party at war with another. While we may have private enemies, the Constitution would be looking at a public enemy, one who is at war with the United States. Congress has not declared war since 1941. While there are plenty of nations or parties that hate the United States and would even attempt to injure this country, is that the enemy the drafters and ratifiers of the Constitution were thinking of? A court adjudicating that the respondents who have taken the oath of office to be incapable of holding their offices or who have adhered to a domestic enemy means nothing without such removal from office. Does the Supreme Court have the authority to remove someone from office? There are only 2 clauses in the Constitution that authorize removal of a sitting elected representative or senator. Article 1, Section 5, Clause 2 says, "Each House may determine the rules of its proceedings, punish its members for disorderly behavior, and, with the concurrence of 2/3, expel a member." And Article 2, Section 4, which says, "The President, Vice President, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors." The Constitution does not delegate to the courts the power to remove someone from federal office. Only the representatives of the people and the states have such a power. It may seem to Mr. Brunson that being found ineligible for office without removal would mean nothing, but that doesn't make it legal. Furthermore, Brunson's allegations against respondents adhering to a domestic enemy and committing acts of fraud are not protected by any kind of legislation of jurisdictional immunity. Essentially, acts of Congress cannot protect fraud, nor protect the violation of the oath, or that give aid and comfort to the enemies of the United States Constitution or America as alleged in Brunson's complaint against the respondents. Mr. Brunson may be correct that Congress cannot pass a law granting themselves immunity, but the Constitution already has one. In Article 1, Section 5, Clause 2, as I've already quoted, it is an incontestable fact that the respondents committed fraud and treason, breaching our national security, as factually alleged in Brunson's complaint, thus adhering to a domestic enemy that continues to breach our national security at an alarming rate on a daily basis. I'm not sure that the facts presented so far show that it's incontestable that the respondents committed fraud, much less treason. And the repeated claims that there is an as yet unnamed domestic enemy does not help Mr. Brunson's claim to my mind. Brunson's complaint alleges fraud, violations of the oath of office, and touches on acts of treason committed by the respondents. These serious offenses need to be addressed immediately with the least amount of technical nuance of the law and legal procedures, because these offenses are flowing continually against Brunson's liberty and life, and consequently is a continual national security breach. Mr. Brunson's complaint may allege fraud, violations of the oath of office, and touch on acts of treason, but so far the evidence of that is quite flimsy. Voting is the greatest power an individual can exercise in a republic. It is Brunson's personal voice and the way he can protect his personal constitutional protected rights and the U.S. Constitution. When the allegations of a rigged election came forward, the respondents had a duty under law to investigate it or be removed from office. Check the Constitution, the supreme law of the land. There is no duty or even a power for Congress to investigate crimes. That's a job for the executive branch. In fact, a look at the 12th Amendment shows that Congress has only one job in this situation: witness the counting of the votes for president. That is, unless one candidate does not get a majority. The President of the Senate shall, in the presence of the Senate and House of Representatives, open all their certificates, and the votes shall then be counted. So where does Mr. Brunson claim that Congress has a duty to investigate election fraud? I've looked. I do not see that as a power delegated to the United States, much less Congress. The efforts made, as stated in the complaint, that avoided an investigation of how Biden won the election is an act of treason and an act of levying war against the U.S. Constitution, which violated Brunson's unfettered right to vote in an honest and fair election, and as such, it wrongfully invalidated his vote. To me, this is an interesting statement and possibly evidence that Mr. Brunson is unfamiliar with the actual language of the Constitution. Mr. Brunson claims that Congress avoided an investigation of how Biden won the election. But based on presidential electors the states appointed, there isn't any real question of how Joe Biden was elected. While there is evidence that at least 5 states appointed electors in a manner other than the one determined by their state legislature, I'm not sure that's what Mr. Brunson is alluding to here. And if failure to investigate is an act of treason, well, then we should be lining up pretty much every law enforcement officer and member of the U.S. and district attorney's offices. Why did the Supreme Court ask for additional information as part of this petition? I don't know. I wasn't part of the discussion. As I mentioned in the beginning, Mr. Brunson makes some audacious claims. It could be that the court wanted more information before deciding if there was anything they could legally review. From my review, the problems with Mr. Brunson's complaint are not only many, but as outrageous as the audacity of his claims. Mr. Brunson claims Congress has a legally binding investigatory power not defined in the Constitution of the United States. We have an enemy with only vague claims of identity. We have failure to follow a person's oath of office referred to as treason, something not supported by the Constitution. We have Mr. Brunson calling for a redress that the courts cannot give him, and the removal by the court of the president, vice president, and members of Congress. And finally, we have the desire of Mr. Brunson for the courts to install a new president and vice president based solely on the claims that Congress did not investigate alleged crimes committed at a state level in state elections. Based on this, who's actually trying to levy war against the Constitution of the United States? I remember a contact of mine sent me a link to a video talking about this case, all excited about maybe this is a way we can get rid of Biden. That's why I took a look at it. It's why I took the time to not only explain to him, but to do this video, this podcast, so that you could understand, you have an idea of just how flimsy this case is. I wouldn't be surprised if there are people touting this from every hilltop. If there won't be those who claim that any failure of the Supreme Court to not only take the case, but fine for Mr. Brunson, well, is their own treason, an act of war against the Constitution of the United States. We shouldn't be sucked in by that. There's a reason why I say trust, but verify. I want to verify this case. It's one of the reasons why I say we need to read and study the Constitution, so we recognize when these types of claims that are blatantly unconstitutional are made. Sure, you may want to get rid of Biden as badly as I do, but not at the expense of the Constitution of the United States. You know, my mother always told me that two wrongs don't make a right. Well, if that is true, if there were violations of the oath of office or violations of the Constitution, if the law was broken in the installation of Biden as president, breaking the law to get rid of him doesn't make it better. It just sends us further down this hole towards the destruction of the rule of law, something we are already heading for, seems to be about as fast as we can. Now, you still have a few days left to get 20% off my books and my Made in Tennessee t-shirts. Just go to constitutionstudy.com and go to the books and more section. You'll find out more there. I'm working on some plans for 2023. I've got some, they're still in the works. I want to do another Constitution study online. Find out more at constitutionstudy.com/study. I've got some other things I'm putting together, but I'd really love your feedback. The Constitution study is here to help educate people. So I'd love your feedback on what you'd like to see. More videos, different content, different classes. Just go to Constitution Study. If there's not something you want to comment on, just ask a question or contact me through the website. I'd be happy to hear it. So as I prepare for 2023, I hope you're preparing as well. I hope you have a blessed and happy new year. I hope 2023 is better than 2022. And I hope you and your friends and your family will join me in that new year right here at the Constitution Study.